All right, so today we're going to go over what to do with this design trim sheet that you have. Here's my stone one. If you did metal, it'd be the same thing, more or less. So my stone one has some bricks on the top. It has a channel kind of thing in the middle here. It has this pattern in here, and then it has an actual cutout channel. Some of these I may or may not use. I really kind of want to see how they come out when I build stuff like this. But one of the things I do want to point out that it's just like what we talked about before, where I divided it into 8 pieces, and each of these 8 pieces, sometimes they contain 2, and sometimes it's 1, and then we have these floater things down here at the bottom. We'll talk about those in a later class. This isn't really what we're worried about. It is a section of what we're doing, but it's not the king here. So we're going to get through some of these today. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. If I'm going to do this as just a stamp or something else. But the idea is you take this, you take it into Max, we set it up, we build it as separate elements. So that how we build it is kind of up to you. But you know, you can use this, you can use Max, and then you can add detail to it in ZBrush. We do want to have some detail. Now I know that these aren't quite the stone patterns or the stylized patterns that we used in we're using for our background stuff. So you can go and do it stylized, it's completely fine, but this is just pretty much the layout of the pattern. It's nothing more than that. So now I'm going to come into Max, and inside of Max I'm going to have a character that's set up, that's already, or a box. I've made a box that's 180 by 50 by 50. So it's about the size of a human, if we look at it in meters. Centimeters because it's 1.8 meters, so we know this. Go back in here, we're going to make a plane. It doesn't really matter the size at this point because we're going to modify it. We're going to right click to get off of it, go into the modify menu with it selected, and we'll be able to see it. We want to have it about 4 meters by 4 meters. So this is right here. 400, and then tab 400. I just got lucky that it was so close. I want to kind of bring it down to the center of the world. We aren't going to use this as an actual model, but it's a good habit to get into. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is come inside of here and say we need to divide it. And we want to divide it just like we did with the image. So if I say 8 here, 88, it's perfectly divided just like the image. If I say 1 here, that means there's no division. So it looks more like what we have in the image. I'm going to go to my materials, and what I've done is I'll do it again. I just made a standard material. I'm going to come grab diffuse off, general, bitmap, find that bitmap that we made. I saved it out as stone trim, put it in here, and then attach it to the object and make sure it's showing, and then hide it. And now look at that. It's just exactly like our stone trim image that we had in the other place. And the reason we want to keep it this height is because this is about the scale we want to make things in this case, and we can make them bigger or smaller if you need to, but this keeps us about right. That means it's about 2 meters to the midpoint, and then if we cut that in half again, it's a 1 meter. So that's a 1 meter bevel right there, and that's a 1 meter 2 bricks, and that's not too bad. I mean, it's a big bricks, and it was supposed to be because it's I'm going to use it for the archway. But anyway, so now with this set up, we want to do one more thing. We want to name this. We're going to name this, actually, yeah, we can just name it now. We're going to name this Trim Float Master, like that. And then I'm going to duplicate it, and the easiest way to duplicate it is Control V, and then turn off the instance. You don't want it to be an instance. And we'll call this Trim Float, I'm going to call it Sculpt. It doesn't really matter because it's going to be broken up in a second, but the first one, it does matter. All right, so I'm going to click on it again till I get to the master. I'm going to hide that one. I don't want to look at that one. We'll come back to that when we're done with our geometry stuff we're going to do. We do need to have that master before we go. If you don't, then you have to rebuild it. Not the worst thing in the world, but it makes your life a little bit easier. So right now, we're going to break apart each of these strips. Some of these strips are divided in 2, like we said, so we're going to go ahead and convert to an oval poly. We're going to come over to our edges, and we're going to make sure that we don't have these mid edges because we don't need them for these bricks. So I'll leave that one because it looks like we will use it, but I won't use I'll take off this one. So Control Backspace to remove an edge. And then I'm going to come in here and go to poly mode and grab these polys and just attach them all, because I want them all to be separate, because whether I take them into ZBrush and sculpt them, or you try and do something tileable from Substance Designer, you're still going to want to have these as separate strips, and eventually you'll be able to see how it works on that last piece we just made. technically, in a lot of cases, if all you're doing is working on models, are you working on trim sheets, and this was all trim sheets and no floaters, you could stop and save this off and then use this as your plane from now on and then just sculpt everything on top of it. But since we are going to keep coming back to it, we made a copy of it so we can have that there. So at this point, I'm going to separate these out. And each of these is going to be a separate model because it's easier to sculpt and set up inside of something like ZBrush if they're set up like this. Anyway, so I'm going to break these up. I'm going to say detach. So at this point, I need to, now that they're all separated, I need to look at breaking them out and actually building some of the geometry inside of here. So if I take this and I extrude this out, even though I want these all to be separate bricks, I really want to cut this up. But if I do it the way I have it set up right now, it's going to, every time I cut here to get this mid brick, it's going to cut an extra vert right here. So really what I'm going to do real quick is take this and detach it again. I'm just going to detach it as an element, that's fine. So I'm going to take this one to start with, and I'll just put on my 2 for edge mode, go to here, or Alt-R to select it, and then come into connect. And let's see, 1, 2, and that's not what I wanted. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to do 4, like that. And they're not going to be in the right spot, but if we have the preserve UVs on and move it around, move one around at a time would even be better. Move one over here, and then move one over here, and then move one over here, and finally this one here. Now we're going to have to deal with this spread coming off the edge over here, so we have something like we're used to seeing inside of ZBrush, but we'll do that in a second. Then I'll get over to this edge, and let me see, this edge, and Alt-R to grab that one, and just do the same thing again. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 as well, so looks good. We'll just grab this one, move it here, this one, and move it over here, this one, and move it over here. And now we've got all those set up, so we've got those two, and we can come back and do these in a second. But let's finish this. So the next thing I want to do is I could separate these bricks right now. That'd be probably the fastest way to do it. So let's just do that. Let's just say break, and we'll just say detach element. And actually the best way to do this, we do F2, is to grab more than one at a time. But you can't grab 2 at a time because it'll think it's the same thing. But if you grab this one, and this one, at least, you can say detach, and they'll all be separate elements. And then I can grab this one and this one, or just this one, and this one, and say detach. And then hopefully have separate, 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 missed one, so detach. And then separate, 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 and separate. So they're all separate now. Now when I extrude them, they won't share an edge. There's a way to fix that problem. It was a pretty cool trick, but this is just a faster solution. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to say extrude. I'm not going to say bevel because I don't care about the edges on it. So I'm just going to say extrude, and I'm going to say 10 sounds good. We just want something to start with, and we'll say OK. And 10 is not even a meter, so it's probably really, really short, but that's fine. Well, a meter's 3 feet, but you know. The next thing you need to do real quick is we need to take this off and move it all the way over here, because that's the extent of the whole brick. And take this one off and move it all the way over here, so that's the extent of those 2 bricks. So this is where it gets a little tricky. Not tricky, it's something you can't handle, but we're going to take this, go to 4, grab this edge, delete it, grab this edge, delete it, and then I'm going to go to 5, grab this whole thing, and turn on my snap, and snap these back together. Alright, so I'm going to come over here and move them off a little bit and up. We'll snap them back in place in a second, because I don't want to fight with these over there, so I'm going to go to 1 for vert mode, and collapse these 2 together. Delete the interior faces if you haven't already. Collapse those 2 together. I'll do this again on the next one. and collapse. And now if I go to 2 and double click, it should go all the way around. I can push Alt or Control backspace and we'll get rid of that edge. Then all I have to do is snap it back into spot. So I'll go to element again, grab everything, turn on the snap, and snap it back to there. So I'll do this again with these right down here. So I'm going to grab this element and this element, and I don't want them to fight with down here. So what I'm trying to avoid is there's actually 4 points here. So, and before it was even worse because there were stuff there. So I'm going to move these off. I'm going to turn off my snap, make my life easy, move these off, and then we're going to do this one to snap to here, like that. Come to our 1, and then we're not going to be able to weld them yet because they're still interior faces. So we go back to 4 actually, delete this interior face, delete this interior, 1 for each of the boxes. And then I'm going to come to 1 and select this and collapse it, and then select this and collapse it, and then select this and collapse it, and select this and collapse it. Okay, and then I can double click on it, check it, and say Control backspace to get rid of that edge, and then I'll take this with the move tool, go to element, select it, and snap it to where it needs to be. So now I've got this, but now these are all off. Well, just like our last brick wall, we need to do the same thing that we did before, and these should actually match up perfectly. So let's see if it worked. I'm gonna hold Shift and drag and snap them back into place. So now I missed a little bit, but there. So now they're all lined up again. They look like they're perfect, and they're all separate, and everything works great. So now on to the next one. Okay. So we got that. Now we're going to look at another one here. We're going to come to this guy, turn this off, second one here. This one seems easier. So I'm going to take this, and then I'm going to cut it up so it works. So I'll do 2, go to edges, go to here, 2 I said, 2. My keyboard's acting funky. And do a connect in this case, and we'll just do it by 2. And then we'll use the spread it and spread it out to about right there. I'll say that this is the base and this is the extruded part. So I will go to 4 and grab these edges here, and I will extrude them. Extrude and just leave it flat like that since we're in the front viewport. And then come back in here and do a scale in 2 directions. But you probably want to do 1 at a time here, so we'll just do it real quick. And then we'll click on this one and do it real quick. And that'll just give us a good start for our bevel. And if we want, we could even do it more so it feels like there's more of a curve on it or something like that. And in fact, if you want to, you could also just come back to your materials. So if you get distracted by seeing this, and turn off the show material on object, and then we can just see our objects now. So there we go. And if you want that deeper or less, you can do that. My plan is to put some kind of pattern inside of the channel. So there's that one, and then come back in, turn on the material. You can leave this off screen, I'll just leave it off. And then we'll look at this one. This one is going to be more sculpting than anything, so most of the work is going to be done inside of ZBrush, but this one, is, you can see, is pretty much like this one, so we'll just do it in here, at least block it in here. I didn't actually cut these edges in here. I figured we could do this in ZBrush. This one, I may even leave them out altogether. So I'm going to let ZBrush, when I get in there, I'll decide how I'm going to do it. I do think that these are thicker than they need to be, but again, you can fiddle with that once you get in ZBrush. The idea is that we have this set up. So we'll come to this guy, go back to poly mode, and this time, actually, we're going to have to divide it again, but we're going to have to divide it in 2 directions. So we're going to go connect 2 times, oops, and do it like this. I mean, of course, you could use, edge loops, or you could use loop, swift loop, but I always like to have it even. That's just me being me. And then I'm going to grab this one, and then I want to pull these closer together this time, so I have that. So basically I'm trying to fix that out. And if I was going to do this for the game, I would divide this here and or collapse these edges so there's just a tri kind of looking, but it'd actually be quads. But I'm not worried about that. Again, we're doing this all for the normal maps. That's all we're trying to get out of this, the main part of it. So now I have that, and I go back to poly mode, grab these. For now, I'm going to leave them the way they are and thicker in that area. And then we're going to extrude. And again, you may want to bevel these, but if you're going to do them, I would do them separately. So take this edge here and bevel it in this way. Just keep an eye on how much you're doing it down here when you do it. So like this, you can see them going down to 90. If I turn on the snap, which you have to come up to button to do, you can see that it's set to, there's default 5, so we could even do 10 if you want. And with that snap on, when I scale, it'll scale 10 degrees every time I move it, which is probably more than enough for this. I'll scale it the other way. That's too much. Okay, and then we'll do this one this way. $90. We're just doing a little bit. We're gonna do some sculpting to make them show up anyway. So okay, and then I'll close that. Turn off my my snaps altogether, and then we'll take a look at it again with just the material on, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so we have all these set up. We have extra polys in here. This will divide this area up when we do the divisions inside of ZBrush. This has nothing on it, but that's pretty much where we want to start. So I'll be right back in the next video on how to get it to in ZBrush and sculpt again, and it's something you've seen before.